the stream. The stream is started. Let's see. All right. Make sure this guy works. Oh, it helps if I plug it in. All right. Ha. Sweet. Good to go. Hey, thanks, man.
Yes.
All right, how's everybody doing today? Doing good? All right, we ready to learn about some Docker?
Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Get that started. So yeah, this session is Docker in a Flash. This is an introduction to Docker. So we're going to go over some basics getting into Docker, some basic terminology. We want to hopefully send you on your way knowing how to use Docker in some way or another when you leave here. Maybe if you have some questions about some terms and things that you may have read with Docker that may be kind of confusing because there are a lot of different terms out there, and knowing which version of Docker to use, which one's best for me, which one's best for my environment. That's what we're hoping to cover here. So to get started, my name is Will Jackson. I am from Aiken, South Carolina. I've been working with Drupal for about 8 years, and before that I worked in web development, other CMSs, U107, WordPress, bunch of old ones that are some still around, some no longer are. I work for a company called Canopy Studios. We're based out of San Francisco, California. We're a fully distributed shop where our primary focus is Drupal. We do some WordPress work, a little bit of Rails. We're a full-service web agency, so we build really awesome websites. We have a great support program. That's where myself, I work in support, so that's you can probably see some of that from my presentation and some of the points that I want to say are important here. Yeah, so so I guess getting into it, what is Docker? Docker is it's a feature-rich program. So it is virtualization in a sense, so meaning similar to virtual machines, and it's a container-based thing. So you have LXC, Linux containers, and Docker. It's written in Go. It is basically a framework for working with containers. So Docker makes it really easy to build repeatable, automated development environments, whether that be local. You can do production. This talk's going to be mostly about local development using Docker. There's a lot of things you can do with that. It is cross-platform, so it works natively. It works with Linux. You can use this with Windows and Mac. There are different versions of that for both of these. One of the nicest things I think about Docker is that its ability to sandbox really well. So it quarantines a lot of the work that you're doing with a particular project. It could be a demo app, or it could be a full-on project. You can do a lot with Docker, and it's not just specific to Drupal. Although we're going to be talking mostly about Drupal today. Another thing about it is that it uses a shared kernel. So we'll see. We'll talk a little bit more about that. I have a diagram that I think everybody has probably seen if they've looked into Docker a little bit. So it shares some of the resources across all of the containers and environments that you have on your system, which is one of the differences with between that and virtual machine or virtual machine routes. And it's really good for resource management. So you're able to very precisely set amount of resources for a particular container. Other things too, like disk space. Disk space, it works off the host system, so you don't have to worry about provisioning certain drives or things like that. Specifically for Docker, you can use your base drive as well. There's also a low switch cost, meaning that if you're switching between projects, Docker is really good for that. So again, coming from the support world, it's really nice to be able to switch between one project and another one without having to worry about spinning up an environment. If you're using something like Vagrant or VirtualBox or something like that, you would have to spin up one environment, spin down the other one, and so there's no conflicts. With Docker, you can run into conflicts, but there's a lot of work that's been done to mitigate that. And actually, Docksal, which we'll get into towards the end of the presentation, does a whole lot of good magic just to make that process wait for it, which is really neat. Yeah, so Docker also comes with a community, similar to the Drupal community. There's Docker Hub, which is what we're looking at here. The screenshot is here. Similar to Drupal.org, if you're familiar with Drupal, I imagine you are. Here we can create repositories, we can share our images. They have public and private hosting, so kind of think of it like GitHub for Docker images. An image, we'll get into that in a little bit, but images could be for a Debian image or a Ubuntu image, something that is publicly available, or if you wanted to create an image specifically for a project or something that you don't want to put out to the world, they do have options for private hosting too. It costs a little bit of money, but it's not a lot, and it's really useful. So yeah, you can create repositories. A lot of the images that we find on here, specifically the Drupal image, is better for demonstration. You can, I guess, develop with it, but it's more for you just want to show somebody Drupal and show how that works. So I've seen a few people that have gone there and tried to, expect it to have a lot of tools and things that you're used to having, but it doesn't have that. So automated build repositories is a newer thing too, which is really neat. It can connect with GitHub, and as you push changes to your images, automatically builds that somewhere else. It's really, really cool stuff. So that's hub.docker.com. I skipped that. Yeah, I did. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit more about the historical development environments. So just how things were done in the past, that we can kind of compare this to Docker a little bit. So we've got bare metal, which is your WAMP, your XAMPP, your LAMP stacks. If you're installing Apache yourself on a machine, and that's what we're putting under the bare metal setup. Some of the pros to this setup is it's very easy to set up. I mean, you can go to countless websites and find documentation and set that up. It's been around for a long time, and there's just a lot of tools. It is easy to use. So if you're using like MAMP or Octave Desktop or something like that, that's going to be this bare metal approach. And again, it is well documented. It's cross-platform for the most part. I mean, if you're using Mac or Windows, and you're going to have to install some other tools to do that to support it. But some of the cons of this is that it's going to take more time to get set up on projects. You're going to have to go and create that for each particular project in most cases, unless you have it scripted. There's also a lack of sandboxing. So things that seem to happen on the system kind of stay on the system. I mean, I'm sure everybody has worked on a project and you find a database 3 years down the road, you don't know where it came from, but it's sucking up like 5 gigs in your system, and you couldn't use those 5 gigs for something for a long time. So Docker does a really good job of kind of keeping those assets funneled into one place. So you can manage those assets, and you can remove the container, it kind of goes with that too, which is really nice. Probably the biggest con about this, though, is just that it's not easily shareable. I mean, sure, you can write a script and provide it to somebody, but I mean, differences in hardware, differences in Linux preferences, your scripts might not always work. And you can always document things too, but not everybody goes and looks at the documentation where, certain steps might be a little bit different for other people, and it just makes it to where it's just difficult passing along to another developer. Or if you're coming into a project for the first time, being able to very quickly get up to speed and start working on the project. Over the years, we've had some developments in virtual machines. So this is VirtualBox. Vagrant. Vagrant really is kind of like almost the in-between for quickly setting up projects. So some of the pros of this, you can have different environments. You can have different virtual boxes. It does work on Mac, Linux, Windows. It works well. It's very well documented. And it is shareable, so you can share the VirtualBox image or the Vagrant file. So it's shareable. Some of the cons of this setup, though, is multiple projects. So if you're working between multiple projects, you're going to have to spin down one VM, turn up the other one, or turn on the other one. Or if there's updates to the project, you're making ups and go get coffee, go get lunch or something, come back, and it's done. So, and again, it's resource demanding. So typically when you're setting up these VMs, you're going to have to specify how much memory that you want to associate to this virtual machine. Some cases, how much disk space you're going to associate to that, and then changing it after the fact. Memory not so much, but disk space can be a little bit of a pain. So it is a little bit tedious. So then this is kind of getting into Docker now. This is going to be the differences between virtual environments and containers, kind of a really high level. So the biggest difference is going to be Right here. So you have your guest operating systems for virtual environments. You're going to have that over every single environment. You're going to have Ubuntu or Debian or whatever version of Linux you like on every single one of those virtual machines, which is okay, but it's kind of not the best way to go about doing this because we're using the same operating system in a lot of cases. Why can't we just share that all? And that's what Docker does. So it's going to be a lot more efficient. It's going to be a lot faster. And overall, it's just very similar in kind of how it works, but overall, it's going to just be more resource friendly. Okay, so talking about just basic terms with Docker. There's a lot of different versions of Docker, places you can get Docker. There's different types of files with Docker. So like, what does it all really mean? First, starting with a Dockerfile. A Dockerfile is just a basic text file that you go through and you can set up. In this case here, we have, who is this from? So who is the author? In this case, I just made a really basic Drupal 8 Docker file. So in this case, it's you have the from. In this case, that's my username on Docker Hub, and then the image name, then the maintainer, so my actual email address, environment variables for Apache. There's some extra stuff here. I have startup scripts. So in this case, I've got a shell script that I am copying into the temp directory. And it's going to get some access directories to dump other things into and copy that as well. And here's some of my entry points. And that should just run my script. So in this script, more or less, it's just starting Apache and starting MySQL. Nothing too crazy. And then the work directory. So whenever I start the container, where it's going into. That's a really basic Docker file. There's a lot of documentation out there for looking into that, but for the base part, this is used for making a single image. So if you want to have a single image for a project, that's where your Docker file comes into play because you can specify that for that specific image. The next term I want to talk about is just so those are Docker images. This is going to be kind of how you would want to install this. Now these are just different options. So this, for example, is Docker for Mac. Docker for Mac is if you were to go to docker.com and look up how to install this on Mac, this is what you're going to see. This is going to be the most prominent option. And this option, it does require you to have a Mac that is 2010 or newer, and OS El Capitan 10 or newer. Reason for that is HyperKit that comes with that version newer. Docker for Mac requires HyperKit to run, so that's your requirements there. This comes with a few other packages too. So you install Docker for Mac. It comes with Docker Engine, which is the basic guts of Docker, and then you have the command line client. Docker Compose, which is awesome for creating multiple containers and linking them together, and then Docker Machine. Really easy to install, use drag and drop, just like in the Mac program. Windows is very similar, 64-bit Windows 10 or newer, and yeah, it's really easy to install. Just kind of go open the button, go through, click the next, finish. And, both give you some options for controlling those resources from the UI. You can control how many process, how many CPUs are being allocated towards Docker, how much memory is there. Both of these are similar. There's similar options. Docker Toolbox. So if you have a machine that doesn't quite meet those requirements, Docker Toolbox is great for older systems. It uses VirtualBox. So it's going to install VirtualBox. It's going to install that base version of Linux so that we can share that kernel across all of our images and containers. And that's it. So you'll have that one image rather than a whole lot of images for different projects. Just one for Docker. That's it. Yeah, and same deal. You'll go through, just very easy to install. That's similar programs as for older versions, for older computers. Data volumes. Data volumes, that is where you're doing your work. So if you create a container, you start that container, you need to be able to access the files there. So this would be like where you do your git clone, where you pull the source code down to your machine. This is going to mount that on your local machine. This is going to give you the option to access those files that you're working with that's on the container. So these can be shared. One thing, whenever you delete the container, by default, it's a security feature, but it does not remove the volume automatically. So it keeps it around. You have to specify that so you don't accidentally delete some data. It's also useful too for some little more advanced things like if you can specify your mounts and where you're actually where you're mounting that volume, and you can mount several volumes. So one thing that you could do is like mount your local SSH directory, which will allow you to have your shared public keys on the container too. So that way, if you're wanting to use like a git pull or something like that within the console of that image, you can do that with your normal keys without having to create new tricks there. And again, with the volumes, you can do, they're both configurable from within Mac and Windows, Docker for Mac and Windows. So I mentioned Docker Compose earlier. Docker Compose is a whole lot of fun. It allows you to run multi-container applications. So this would be like if you wanted to have, if you had a Drupal site, you might have Nginx as your web server. So you would have an image specifically for Nginx. You can then specify very specific versions of PHP, and it's just in one file. It's all done in one place. So we'll look at that now. And actually, this is the file I mentioned is a YAML file, so it's very easy to open and edit. It links them together so that these different images can interact with each other. And if you wanted to update them, I mean, similar to Vagrant, if you're used to that, just Docker Compose, actively put them in. So yeah. And this is an example. Can't read it very well, but this is an example Docker file. This one came straight from Docker for Drupal. So if you've seen that, this is the configuration file for that. It's very basic here. So we have in the top MariaDB, that is our database that we're going to use here. We set up each one of these. So we have like this is going to be one image, one Docker image. This is going to be the second. So this is going to be the PHP version. This is going to be our web server, that's the database. Web server down here, so Nginx, and then I think that's PHP MyAdmin. We have an image specifically for that. But the cool thing about this is that we can, it's probably really hard to see, but like the PHP version here. So what we have actually in this file by default is PHP 7, right? So if we want to change that, maybe go back to 5.6 because we don't like the future. We want to kind of go back a little bit. We can do that. All we have to do is just uncomment one file, comment out the other one, and as we mentioned, just go back here and run Docker Compose up. Now you got a whole new version of PHP, and it's just you change one line in a file, spit out one command. Doing that through bare metal or some of those other historical environments would have a lot more keys to do that. Most of the time, you probably just roll into an environment to begin with. So yeah, and then with this too, so if you have environment variables, so we have like our database, you can actually have the database name, user, password, all that specified right in the Docker Compose file. With PHP, you can do things like imports. So if we have our port mapping here, which is where we're specifying that on 8100 with our actual web server, we're specifying to listen on 8100 for that port 80. So we can do that configuration, all that configuration within the Docker Compose file. And down here, sort of bottom, mailhog, so it's different images for that. So you have several images, pretty much anything that you can go grab off Docker Hub, or if you want to create your own image, you can have a start with a base image, create your own, upload it to Docker Hub, and then include it here too. So that brings me to Docksal. Docksal is, it abstracts a lot of that. So a lot of this, different ports, different Docker files, different Docker Compose files, trying to keep all of that managed. Docksal does that for us. Docksal is a tool originally created by FSW. They're still maintaining that. A lot of people in the project now. It's open source project. It's on GitHub. It's awesome. And hopefully after this, we'll all agree that it's awesome. So it's a command line tool. It's made for defining and managing development environments. That's the, you go to their website, that's what they'll tell you. It does use VirtualBox to support macOS or macOS X and Windows. Although there is, you can use Docker for Windows, Docker for Mac for this. It's more of an experimental release. If you have that installed already and you want to check this out, I would highly recommend uninstalling Docker for Mac and then going through their method of installing it because it would make it a lot easier. Some of the issues is the performance issues with your volumes, and then you have to start thinking about alternative programs like Docker Sync to kind of get around some of those issues. So just backing it out and using VirtualBox gets around those issues and it addresses a lot of performance issues. So just some food for thought there.
Performance issues with Docksal?
It's with Dock. So it's with HyperKit actually. So that's where the problem lies. With HyperKit, mounting your volumes in HyperKit, there's just a lot of latency there. It's not specific to Docksal. It also exists with Drupal for Docker, and even just a normal Docker image too. So I mean, even if you just went and did it from the ground up.
They released an update in the Edge release just this week on the
Nice. Well, I wasn't aware of that, so that's...
We just started testing it.
Okay, so yeah, it was a really big issue.
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, it was every single talk I've ever been to or I've given, it's like the first question, like, it sounds really cool in theory, but man, the performance sucks on it. So it's like, there's Docker Sync. Docker Sync duplicates files. It uses rsync as an rsync daemon to basically duplicate the files, and that's not cool. Like, yeah. So it's really awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So yeah, and then so Docksal comes preloaded with a lot of tools. So we have Drush, Drupal Console, Composer, Code Sniffer. A lot of things is kind of baked right into it with the default configuration. It also supports, Solar, Varnish, Memcache, a lot of the common tools that you're going to be using on Drupal site. Drupal site, you're probably going to have some of these. Hopefully all, but some probably. And since they are containers, since these are images, you can extend that. If there's an image that you want to include that with your default setup, you can do that. This is Docker, these are images, this is all open source, you can do what you wish there. So when you install Docksal, what you're going to use in the most is the fin command. So fin, think Docker is like the whale, the dorsal fin guides the whale, dorsal, Docker, Docksal, fin. Yeah, so that's where it was. But yeah, fin is what you're going to be using the most. We've got custom commands you can add. This is really cool for setting up. It's per project too. So if you would set this up, your configuration for every project that you have, you would do it once. You can include some custom commands. Custom commands are just shell scripts. Bash, you can add custom commands. Once you add it in the special location, it's going to find it, it's going to enable it, and just like Drush, if you install a new module, now you've got a new option when you type in fin. Pretty cool. I think the voodoo magic and the awesome stuff of this comes with this DNS and port management. So if you're using Docker, and if you have been using it for a while, which actually I'm kind of curious to show of hands, who currently uses Docker some way or another? Nice, it seems to be getting more and more each one. So for those of you who are not really familiar with using Docker on day-to-day, if you're using it, you're going to be setting different ports for different images. So just to give you an example, I work support for the company I work for, and I work on maybe 20 to 30 different projects. Not in one day or 1 week always, but we got a lot of projects, and I need to jump and be ready to jump into a project if something comes up. But each one has a different port. So the way I'm coming around this is just, I've got like one URL, and it's like port 8000 is one site, 8001 is another site, 8002 is a different site. You remember it after a while, but it's still something that you have to do. It's this extra step. This DNS magic that they're doing abstracts a lot of that. You don't have to think about it. It's always the same port. There's just an image in between that's kind of handling that. So you're connecting to one image, it does DNS and routing for you. So that way you don't have to think about it. Really smart. And installing Docksal is crazy easy. I mean, it's just literally copy and paste this command into it, and that's going to install Docksal. Again, it does require VirtualBox by default, so it's going to install that initial virtual machine. It's going to get things started, get things going for you, and it's going to be sure that your environment's ready to go, ready to start using them. All right, so I wanted to give you guys a live demo of this. This is always a fun thing. Demos always go beautifully. So yeah. I've already done some work here, so I've already installed Docksal. I'm not going to go through that. There's tutorials and documentation online. Can everybody read that okay, or should I make that larger? All right. This is huge. Okay. So just to show you here, this is an empty directory, right? What we want to do is I want to clone a repository. And this repository that I'm going to clone is kind of a demonstration repo for Docksal. So just git clone, if I can type.
Call it Docksal. Actually, let's put this, we'll call this Texas Docksal. Sure, 2017. Really creative with my naming scheme. So normal stuff, just cloning down a repo. And share again. Okay, good. I have good signal in there, so I shouldn't take just a moment here. I should only take just a moment. Seemed to happen a lot faster when I was doing the demos and I was testing. Yeah, just like watching it now. Okay, great. So yeah, just to clear that up, there's the file or the folder that I just cloned into. I'm gonna go in here, and just to kind of show you here what's in it. We've got a config directory similar, I guess, to how Acquia was set up. Their doc, they'll initiate the doc root one level back, or I'm sorry, they'll initiate the repository one level back from the doc root. Some people will have good arguments for that, against that. I like to see both. See that there's positives in both. So in this case, we have also hidden files too. So we've got this .docksal directory. And if we go into .docksal and just take a look, a few files, the commands directory. So this is those awesome custom commands I was talking about. You put them in that directory and then they're available to you. This docksal.env, that's our environment file. So let's go take a look at that. And basic stuff. So we have different stacks. So like different stacks, this would be, you would have your default stack, which in this case we're doing Drupal 8. But you can have a stack for Acquia, a stack for Pantheon, a stack for Blackmash, a stack for different versions of PHP. The choices are endless, and you can go and create stacks for each one, however you want to create said stack. We're just going to use the default here. The web images, so here this is going to be the actual image. So this is Apache 2.2, MySQL, and PHP 7. Next things we have down here are going to be the configuration. So we've got the virtual host. This is just going to be what we're actually naming that file as we want to access it via the browser. You can change this too. You can put whatever you want there. Actually, I'm going to do that, but I'm in less at the moment. So here, let me just back out and do that. Well, upset the Vim people. Yeah. So Texas. Let's call it Texas camp.docksal. That's apt enough. Okay, so we've just changed the host name of what we want to call this site. And just to look at it again, there's not a whole lot more below that. We've got our doc root. We actually have settings for MySQL. And then like if we wanted to turn Xdebug on or off, you would do that from here. So let's end that. And then pretty much all we have to do at this point, because the only thing I've done this far is just change the host name of what I want the site to actually be called. So from here, all I have to do is type fin. So fin init. So what's it going to do? First, it's going to check to see if we have, okay, that's really fast. It's going to check to see if we have settings on local. It's going to check to see if there are any images and containers running under the same name first. If it is, it's going to remove them so we can recreate them without conflict. It's going to start our services. So this is going to be our volumes. This is going to be our SSH agents. And then the actual images itself. So we have our database, our command line, and the web interface. In this case, this is going to be Apache. We're now setting permissions. So hopefully permissions are done. It's restarting the daemon, or now it's handling the database stuff, right? So it's going to, it's using Drush site install to install your site. So in this case, it's going to first dump all the database, dump all the tables from the database, because it creates a database first, wants to be sure that's clean, so it removes it. Then it imports everything. This process sometimes takes a few minutes. The last 12 times I've done this today, it's in 30 seconds, so we'll see. Hopefully it won't take too much longer here. And
Yeah, so at this point, I mean, I just grabbed the repo. I just ran this one fin init command. I did change the host name, but I could have left it the same. Just wanted to show you that it's not, it is true, it is real, what you're about to see. So, should be done here in a moment here. There we go. So what we have is, congratulations, you installed Drupal. It tells you reset your admin password as a randomly generated password, or set your admin username, randomly generated password, some stats about how long it took to install, and basically tells us our site's done. So let's check it out. So, I don't think that makes it faster. Hooray! So now it's done. So I mean, I just ran like one command and I have my entire site installed. Now granted, this is just a core Drupal 8 install, so it's nothing super impressive. But you can pull whatever database you want. I mean, you can have a script that then goes and pulls in your database from Pantheon, from Acquia, from whatever your production host is. So I mean, that's really your biggest difference. I mean, you can use things like stage file proxy to load in remote file systems to make things a little easier for you. That's a module, by the way, if anyone's okay. So yeah, basic Drupal site, and now let's interact with this. So, all right, so we want to take a look at this. Let's go into the doc root. I actually put too many D words. All right. So now there are a few ways we can interact with the site. So if you are familiar with Docker, you could run like there's an exec command that you could run to kind of pass one-off commands to it. Typically, people just exec bash, which what that does is pretty much the same thing as using SSH to connect to a machine. So, and Docksal is not any different. So it still has fin. So fin, I'll just type fin real quick so we can kind of see a list of various commands. It's hard to read at this resolution though. And these are things that we can look up later. But again, this presentation is about Drupal, but it also works with WordPress and works with pretty much any type of Linux-based hosting platform that you're into. But execs. So I'll do fin. There's the exec command, which is basically just run this command from this directory. So like if I wanted to do just an ls maybe, you do fin exec ls, and it'll do it inside that container using that shell. So that's my basic ls. You can also do things like drush. So you could do like drush status. You don't have to do the exec. Fin knows it's smart. It knows Drupal, so you don't actually have to put the exec there. You can just put drush. It knows. So yeah, drush stuff. Or if you just want to drop in the shell like you would like any other Docker image, you can just do, I think that was a fin. Oh yeah, it's fin exec bash, I think. Or no, it's fin bash. No, that's it. Yeah, so yeah, now I'm in the shell. Now I'm actually, think of it like I just SSH'd or use SSH to connect to the terminal. It's the same thing. You're able to connect to that remote machine. Other cool things that you can do with this. Okay, so now that we're actually in the machine, let's just do like a drush ULI, just so I can show you that it is the same site that we're working with here. That'd be a pretty easy way to tell. It's not what I want. There we go. So I'm logged into the site. All right, and the next thing. So let's say we wanted to go change the URL, for example. We wanted to change some environment settings on our project here. So what we'll do, I'll just exit out of this, go back to here. Where am I at? So I'll go back one directory. I want to go in here and do that. So let's say if we want to change our the versions will be really cool, but I'll just change this because it's a really easy example. So I'll remove the hyphen and just name this to 2017.
Okay, so now that we've done that, you want to update your settings. It's very similar to Vagrant. Fin up. And what you're going to notice is that 2 of these are already up to date because the command line and the database, nothing changed there. The only thing that changed was that web server, so that one was recreated, or that image was recreated. So now, if we go, and I probably already forgot what I needed to, minus that, okay. So, we go back here, go back here. (2017). Ta-da! You got your new configuration. So if you were changing your PHP version or MySQL or switching from Apache to Nginx, it would be just the same. You would just go make the change, do the up, it's done. So another cool thing that we can do is so that tired old excuse. Well, it's on my local. I got to push it up, right? I guess they've run into that a lot, so they've actually added in a feature for that. It's called share. Really simple, right? So just fin share. All I gotta say. It's what. Okay. Interesting. So fin stop. Shouldn't have run into that error. Live demos, huh? So stop. I guess just to kind of further prove the point here, I'll just go ahead and remove all the images because it doesn't take too long to do that. And I'm not going to go re-download the repo because that's what took a long time last time, or took the longest last time. So, yeah. So fin init, and more or less just repeat that same process we went through. Sure, I missed a step along the way, but without having to debug in front of everybody, I'll just start over here. This process won't take long. I guess we can use this as the time while we're waiting for this. Does anybody have any questions at the moment? Or awesome. I guess I saw your hand first. No.
It's been a couple months since I used this, but wasn't there like a fin config up or something like that that took the folder name and changed the URL to the folder name?
Yeah, so I haven't used that one so much. There are a lot of commands in there. I haven't dug through all of them yet. So yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of update commands within Finland to do that then. But it also changed a lot too. It's a very actively developed project. So if you go to GitHub, I mean, there's commits to this thing all the time, which is a really good sign. That's going to have nice longevity.
I just wanted to see if you could maybe illustrate the use case in which, or example, VHAT integration.
Gotcha. I don't have that set up right now, so it would take a while. But no, it's something that you would probably the best way to go about doing that would be to find an image on Dockerhub, something that is supported. You could bake that into your setup. Just through that file that we're looking. Well, you would just add another image to that, or you can create a new stack. So if you wanted to have like a stack specifically for VHAT testing, you could do that. And you just create a stack that has VHAT included, and you could either use it as your default or go and make when you're setting up the file for your environment file for your project, you can set that project to use something with VHAT or with VHAT or something like that. And then from there, it would just be just like VHAT anytime else, in the same format, same use cases.
So one thing I was really curious about is you said that this helps with switch times and
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
Do you know how much, or did you?
Yeah, there's not zero. I mean, you can keep them running. You can have them all running. Granted, this is going to be like a hardware thing, so if you have enough memory on your system, sure. But if you actually have a hardware there, you can have multiple images running. So it would just be a matter of going to the other URL, going to the other directory on your machine. I mean, it wouldn't be. There's no need really to spin one down and spin one up, because when the resources are not being used, or when the image is not being used, it's not consuming. I mean, there's still using some idle resources, but I mean, it's not like virtual machine where if I've locked in 2 gigs of RAM for this one virtual machine, now my machine only had 8 gigs to start with. Now I've got 6.
no matter if I'm using the machine or not, if it's running, it's using it. Docker's not quite like that. It's going to have better resource management.
What sorts of an impact did it have on your support team?
I'm still in the process of convincing all my support team to get on board. So we have a few different. We're in the process of standardizing. It's just trying to get what those standards are, and we're in the process of discussing that. And this is one of my ways to like this is the future. Let's do this. Let's do this only. I'm gonna try to strong arm it, but we've got some really smart people that have really good cases and a lot of stuff put in behind that too. So it's a little bit more of a tedious conversation, but no, as far as me, it's amazing. So yes, sir.
So for the use case of you're aiming a site and you're working in your local file system there to do whatever SAS you're working on, but you need to run the compiler or the either npm or grunt or both. Are you exec bashing into the environment to run that, or are you running that locally, or
You can do either
one?
You can do either one. So, well, kind of. Locally, not as much. You would install it with your image, or you would have something with your image. If you have access to the file, so something like Compass, like where you're compiling your code that way, you can run that locally because it's just going to look for your, SCSS files and then generate it that way. So yes and no, you can do it locally. Sometimes if you actually need to, like Grunt, for example, it might be a little bit more. You would want to run that on the machine, so you could do something like exec into it, or you could just straight exec that. You could create a custom command for it, just to where it's like thin grunts custom command. You could do that, and makes it kind of just puts it inside the Docksal space. So
the file changes go between your local and
right, it's mounted. So basically, think of it like a network mount almost. Just the files that change here, they are the same files. It's just the same directories as mounted.
So you probably could run them locally then, right?
What's that?
You could run the commands locally since they.
Yeah. I mean, to some degree. I mean, it depends on what the commands are and what it is that it's doing. But yeah, in most cases, yeah. So you'd be able to do that.
Is there a sudo command?
Sudo command. So when you're running typically with Docker, you're going to be running as root.
Okay.
I mean, that's when you're into the container, you're running as root. Docksal, and I'll just show you here. So I just dropped into it. Yeah, so when I dropped into the shell here, this one is not root. You still have full access to machines. You can create custom users just as you would on any other machine. So in this case, they've just done that for us and created a Docker user. I think this part just looks cleaner than the normal default. Because typically it'll be like root at and then a hash ID, and that's like the current revision of that image that you're on. So if you go and install a bunch of other packages to your image, like Drush or Drupal console or something like that, then you would commit whatever that hash ID is to make this the new version. The point of Docksal is to simplify a lot of that and abstract a lot of it. So you're going to run into things like usernames and no hash IDs for good reason though. Okay, so let me just exit out of this. Do my fin share again because that is awesome. Why isn't it doing that? Again, this worked so beautifully, 200 times I did this until the first time I've seen this error in a long time. Yeah, live demos, that's how awesome they are, right? It knows I'm doing a live demo. Why isn't it doing that? I'm what's that?
It's shy.
Yeah, no, it's, in all cases, or in most cases, the way this works is that once you run this command, it creates a publicly accessible URL. You don't have to go and set up port mapping. You don't have to do anything in your router. It just does it. I was demoing this yesterday in the airport. On the airport Wi-Fi, I was able to create a publicly accessible URL from the airport Wi-Fi without having to touch any type of hardware, which I wouldn't be able to anyway. But I mean, it just makes that part really easy. It abstracts a lot of it, and typically, as fast as it tells me I'm messed up right here, is about how long it takes to actually get that up. So it's kind of disappointing that it's sometimes. Let me see. So fin share. Let's try it one more time. Probably not though. Nah, it's a live demo. That's what did it.
You were mentioning making changes within the container, but if you did that and you remove the container, then they're gone unless you create another image, right?
Right. So this is not necessarily a Docksal thing, but more of a Docker thing, like just the kind of baseline Docker. If you can make changes to the image, which you absolutely can, there'll be a hash ID. I've uninstalled all the other Docker stuff, so I would love to show you this, but I just can't at the moment on this particular laptop. But yeah, so there's a hash ID. It looks just like a GitHub or a Git commit hash. So that hash ID is like that unique version of this container. So whenever you install that container, you connect into it, start installing a bunch of things, it's still going to have that unique ID. So then, just like Git, you commit those changes to that image. You can push it up to Docker Hub just like you do GitHub. Yeah, and then that's how you would add your own custom changes to your own custom image and then push it up on Docker Hub and then share it with other people.
So it needs to go up to Docker Hub then?
It doesn't have to. I mean, you can just create a Docker file and run everything locally. Docker Hub just makes it a little more convenient. You're putting it out there. You're not going to have the Docker file, or like say if I take my Docker file, upload it to Docker Hub, you want to go get my image, you absolutely can do that. It's going to be a little more difficult for you to get the Docker file though. I could also provide you with a Docker file, and then you can run like a Docker build from that file. Which is the common way. If you're writing your own files, you would do that first. You that builds the image from the Docker file, and then that image is what you then push up to Docker Hub.
You said
Yes,
at the
sir.
beginning that the Drupal image on Docker Hub was more for demo.
More for demo, yes, sir.
Not for development. Is the Docksal image more of a good starting point for development?
It's not a bad one. I mean, it's more of a demonstration for Docksal's capabilities, but yeah, no, I mean, it would be.
So you have to kind of build your own.
You don't have to, but you could start with that. I mean, it's a perfectly. There's no reason why you wouldn't want to.
Okay.
I mean, it has a lot of stuff built in for you. A lot of the Docksal.
Where else would you go to find something to start with?
Well, just Docksal.io, I would probably use that as a base. There's a really great resource of documentation on this website, so you can use that to build your own images. The images itself, so why does it keep going always the wrong way? So just kind of go back to that Docker file, or that Docker compose file. I wonder if I can make this a little bit larger. No, I can't. But yeah, so all of these are images here. Really hard to read, I apologize for that. But so like this image here is like would be Drupal Nginx 1.10. That's on Docker Hub. Each one of these are on Docker Hub. So in this case, this is the Docker for Drupal, the example from Docker for Drupal. So a lot of these are going to be in the same place as this would be user. So you've got one for MariaDB, you've got one for PHP 7, you've got one for Nginx, and all of these are available on Docker Hub. So I mean, if you go to Docker Hub and you find a different version, maybe you have an older site. Maybe you don't want the bleeding edge. You kind of want to, but you're not quite there yet. Maybe. So I mean, like you might need to go back to PHP 5 or maybe 5.3 or something. I don't know why, but you have that option. Images for older ones might be a little bit more difficult to find. So that's where your Docker files come into play, because you're going to have Debian, for example, the operating system. They have version, I think, 8 and 7. Well, there's just a Debian image, which is, I think, like 8.5. It's the latest version of Debian. And they have other Docker files for the previous version that you just have to go build yourself if you want to use them. So it's hosted in one place, but once you get it, you can download it. And you can find Docker files, Docker compose files, you can find those all over the internet. I mean, you'll find them on Docker Hub is probably the best place to start. But yeah, you'll find them on GitHub, you'll find them on a lot of different places. And it doesn't require you to actually put the image to Docker Hub. So I mean, if you're trying to work on something internally, or you have like an internal project that you might not necessarily want to share that image to Docker Hub, you can use Docker files, Docker compose files. That can just be included with your repository, which would then be a private repo.
I don't know if we have time, but I was hoping we could compare and contrast some of the options available on Docker. I think I've heard of like 4 different options right now. Like the straight Docker files, the Docker Compose, which you mentioned. Looks like Docksal is a new one I just learned about today. And then the last one that I haven't heard mentioned yet is like Calbox.
Yeah, so actually Calbox was in my presentation. I removed it just because last time I did this presentation, I was really excited to talk about Docker. I got halfway through the presentation, I was out of time. I know it's a really weird presentation, so I pulled out a lot of stuff. CalBox is great though. It's really cool if you're just looking for if you have a site that's on Pantheon and that's the only place you have, maybe a couple of single sites that are all on Pantheon, CalBox is great. The interface for it is fantastic. It is built on Docker. I think there's an option for like $100 a year, I think like $99 a year for the developer release, and it allows you to, it gives you the options, it makes available options to better support using your own images. CalBox, one really cool thing about CalBox that I've seen is that they have images for Solar and a lot of other things that are kind of difficult to find, like the Pantheon version of Solar. I need this locally, and it's hard to find that. I mean, you can build it and you can kind of get it close, but you know, it's still that little percent of uncertainty that it's not exactly where it needs to be. And no, CalBox does a really good job for doing that. They actually have an image for that. I mean, it's literally a few clicks. It syncs up with the Pantheon API with Terminus and pulls it all down. It's pretty awesome. But Docksal is way more powerful. So I mean, it's and I would say it's more supported too. I mean, CalBox is there. CalMoon is the guys who support that. They do a great job of it. But Docksal, it had a lot more people on the project. So I mean, a lot of people working on it, and I think it's just a little bit more ambitious as far as what it's trying to do. Because those command, I could spend all day going through the command list and just I'd probably find new things that I haven't seen yet, and then I get sucked into it trying to play with it. So, but yeah, there's CalBox is a good one. I've heard some.
So CalBox, I'd say, is kind of like the out-of-the-box type setup. You know, you click a button, it works. I think there's a couple bugs that I've had to get around. You know, Google can kind of help you out with that.
Oh yeah.
But it looks like you kind of compared Docker Compose versus Docksal, and then you picked Docksal out of the two. Can you explain why?
Yeah. So mostly just the port abstraction. So not having to worry about ports, not having to worry about like what port did I put that to. Having in the big PHP Storm. I mean, a lot of people I'm sure use PHP Storm. That's great. You know, the Xdebug is a fantastic IDE for working with Drupal sites. Configuration though, trying to get everything set up and having a lot of projects. Again, I'm coming from support, so like working on dozens of sites at a time. You know, having to go set up different configurations for each single one. It's a pain. I mean, it's just a pain.
Yep.
So I mean, like it's just not having to worry about all that stuff. Docksal just kind of makes that easy, just to where I have like a base configuration. I don't have to think about it, and I can have people on my team run this one command, set up your environment, done. Like, you know, it's not. I don't have to then try to estimate for how long is this local going to take to set up. And now this person's pulled another project. Now I need another developer. Now I'm billing more, or I'm doing more. I'm spending more time doing local environments. So that one command just to kind of do everything is beautiful. And not that you couldn't, you absolutely could do it with Docker Compose. It's just going to be a little bit more work that you would have to do on your end. Going with the route of Docksal, that work's already been done and it's supported. So I mean, it's you know, kind of following that same Drupal contrib kind of mentality. And you know, it also comes out of the box, supports other CMSs too. So I mean, there's a lot of flexibility with it. And again, there's just more and more stuff, great documentation. That's great. Docksal.io is that.
I'm also in support. How hard is it to set up Docksal on an existing site?
Oh, an existing site?
Yeah.
So if you've never used Docker before, really easy. It's just that one command, you copy and paste, and you're done. I mean, it sets up VirtualBox for you. It sets up all the things you need to where at that point, you just then have to go set up the environment file, the actual Docksal file. Documentation on that's fairly easy. I would recommend going to their Drupal 8 or 7 project, depending on what your project is and projects are in support, and just kind of build out that, use that as an example and build out from there. Okay. Any more questions? Should have a slide for questions.
There's Amazing IO.
Yeah. So I guess to review, yeah, I mean, Docker, it's really fast, it's efficient, it's shareable. It's a great community. It's a fast-growing community. Have DockerCons? Then yeah, but next year I'll try to make it there. It's great for development. So I mean, it's great for. It's still kind of on the bleeding edge as far as production hosting, but there's some really cool things. Like Docker Swarm and some of the awesome stuff that you can do there. Again, you could spend weeks talking about that. I mean, it's a really dense subject. And then with Docksal, it's really easy to use. It further increases that shareability. It's customizable. And overall, it just reduces your time it takes to ramp up to a project, to switch to a project. Just all around, it's awesome. So, again, questions? We have any questions? If you think of a question after the fact, Canopy, we have a booth in the main hall. We're going to be there today and tomorrow. Feel free to stop by and hit us up. That is my name. Just Will Jackson's my name on Docker Hub. If you want to check out my images, if you want to hit me up on Twitter, feel free to. Will Jackson00. And yeah, I'd like to thank you guys. I'd like to thank Canopy for sponsoring the trip, and thank everybody who's helping put on Drupal Camp Texas. There's a lot of hard work goes in these events, and I just want to thank everybody for that, putting that on. So thank you.
I was pretty happy to see that Drush was working in it.
Yeah, oh man, it was, I swear, I've done that demo.
Problems with the other
That share demo.
Oh man, I've done it so many times. Oh, I have t-shirts that I would like to, a couple of t-shirts. Anybody want a t-shirt? I've got a male extra large. If you got a different size, I've also got a female large. I've got more. So I've got more.
So what do you Okay.
What he told me to. It's asking me for database. I don't know where to go find it. I assume that's in the Dockerfiles. I don't know where to find that on the
Yeah.
and Dockerfile.
I'm pretty happy about having people in Drupal push for Docker because the last time I checked it, it was still in the works and had like a lot of kinks to work out. I think it still kind of does, but it is doable now. Like I was able to use Catbox online.
Okay.
Well, so I would have recommended like Pantheon is the host and then Calabas for the local development because it would have been Docker based. And yeah, depending on what type of site you have, I have a multi-site setup, so part of it's broken because that's not supported out of the box. So I was able to.
I think you've got the new.
I stopped using Docker.
I mean, it does.
Trying to do the Docker stuff from scratch, it's really crazy. I looked into it.
We get one set up here. So that's
install.
Yes, sir. You have to put the HTTP there. I like to command click on it because it just opens it right up.
So I think the image you got might actually have the repository in the image.
All right, thanks for watching, guys.
No, I see.
No.
Bye-bye.